So you were born in Washington, and then you spent some time in the UK. So how long have you been in Berlin for?
So this go around now with Berlin, I've been here for about 6 years.
Very nice.
Yeah, Berlin happened as a result. Of theater. I got headhunted for theater while I was on tour.
Oh, cool. So how did that intertwine with your music and what you do today?
So the way it intertwined, I was doing a lot of heavy touring between artists. This is like pre-2000, pre-2013, 2011 to 2013. I was touring heavily between 3 different artists. I was doing a lot of touring with Eglo Records, an artist I work with called Crystal Cleon Eglo Records.
Yeah.
I was also touring with Hudson Mohawk. He just released his first record on Warp, Butter, and then I was doing some touring with Odyssey. I just started doing touring with Odyssey as the guitarist and vocalist in a good company. And so I was touring between these three artists, and whilst I was on the road, some feature work that I did with this is long-winded. Some feature work that I did with an artist.
Yeah.
The video director for a video that he was shooting heard the song, liked it, and then fast forward maybe 2-3 months later, ended up picking up a position as an assistant artistic director for a theater show that was happening here in Berlin.
Wow.
And they asked for a particular character, and he put me forward.
I see.
That's how it happened.
That's mad. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's so strange, just how that kind of intertwined. And
yeah, and it was really strange because they asked me to come and do the audition. I said no because I was in the middle of.
What show was it? Was it for? What kind of?
Say again, sorry.
What kind of show was it for?
It was actually a show that was being written. It was being written in real time.
Okay, right.
So they were developing characters, and I was in the middle of pitching music, and I was talking to a couple of labels about my first album, my first LP.
Sick.
And that's what I wanted to focus on. I quit sciences. I was working as a scientist. I quit sciences and was looking to delve full time into music. And when the offer came up, I said, "No, I'm not gonna do this." And my wife was like, "Look, just let's just take a look. Yeah, let's just take a look, see,
What happens?
And so then I saw a preview of their show that was on currently, and I was like, I don't fit any of this. And she's like, just look, they asked you to come out for an audition, just go for the audition. And then next thing I know, they're asking me to move with my wife and family over to Berlin like 3 months later. So there you have it.
Wow, that must have been quite a change for you. So were you coming from moving to Berlin? Were you staying before in Washington?
No, I was in the UK.
Are you in the UK, right? So did you spend quite a bit? So I know you studied in the UK, but how much time did you spend in the UK, and how's it different to Berlin as such? Is there any parts you miss about the UK?
I would say I miss the community in the UK. I studied in the UK, and that's on top of boarding school. I went to university in the UK, and that's how I met my then girlfriend, now wife.
Yeah.
And I would say the thing that I probably miss about the UK the most was the community. I managed to find a community of Afro-Caribbean and Black people that I had a chance to develop a family association with whilst I was living over in the UK, in Oxford specifically. And so I think I miss that. I think I miss although there is a certain level of access to Black and Caribbean culture here in Berlin, particularly food, you know. Yeah, I think there was a lot more of that. There was a lot more of that accessible, that homely vibe, and that accessibility back in the UK. So I think I probably missed that the most if I was to compare the UK to Berlin.
Yeah, yeah, and I can imagine there's definitely like a huge community of like Black and African and European people in the UK, or someone you've you know kind of like to work with potentially. Or was you not that heavy in music at that time? Or?
I was heavy in music at the time, but I was paying attention to, in the UK, I was paying attention to artists that were kind of in my realm, so to speak, or in my tier, as it were, at the time when I was starting out with music in the UK, transitioning from science into music.
Yeah. So
and as a matter of fact, one of those artists is signed to the label that I'm signed to now on First Word Records, Talia. And her and I have been talking about working at some point in time, especially now that we have time with the pandemic and quarantine keeping us locked in. It gives us more time to work on music to a degree. So yeah, I definitely paid a lot of attention to her as far as those guys in my tier, Talia, Fatima, who signed to Egla Records, singer-songwriter. In terms of like more sort of top tier artists that I'm paying attention to in the UK, it's funny, I was actually paying attention to a lot of like a fair amount of like indie rock bands from the UK, as far as that's concerned, because I really that's one of my associations, or one of my influences rather, with music. There's a lot of blues and rock, and Michael Kiwanuka is one of them. He's pretty dope.
He's really cool.
Yeah, he's dope.
As well.
Yeah, indie rock bands. I mean, they're not UK based, but they're signed to Warp. Grizzly Bear. I don't know if you're familiar with them. Grizzly Bear, Department of Eagles. Who else? I really enjoy James Blake's work a lot as well.
James Blake, he makes very beautiful music. Like
he's amazing.
He's very unique. His voice is very unique, and like
the
kind of tones he can reach. It's just you wouldn't expect it from looking at him. Which is
and it's the texture of his voice as well, you know.
Yeah.
That's what always grabs me, is the texture of his voice. I'm like, man, this guy's awesome. This guy's awesome. Moses Sumney's another one. I enjoy a lot of Moses Sumney's music. As far as like wait, he's not a UK artist, is he? No, he is a UK artist. Is he from the UK, Moses Sumney?
I don't think so. I don't.
Maybe he's not. I know he's associated with a lot of UK acts, and that's made me believe that he's from the UK.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's another one, although not associated with the UK. He's another one I pay attention to as far as like the realm of music that I'm operating in.
Yeah, of course. And coming back to First Word Records, like how did you start developing your relationship with the guys there? How did they, and why did you kind of want to sign to them?
My relationship with First Word Records developed as like a couple of degrees of separation. I was working on my album late last year, early this year, and we were looking to pitch it to a couple of labels. And Eric Lau, who signed to First Word Records, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but Eric Lau's a really, really dope hip hop producer, and subsequently an amazing engineer. He has an amazing ear for like engineering and mixing. And I don't mix any of my music. I tried, but that's on top of like,
how come
everything ends at like everything ends at like writing the song and producing the music. Like mixing is another art altogether. So Eric was working on mixing the record, and I was, he's very close. He's very close to me. He's like a brother. I've known him for a while now. I was talking to him about looking at labels. He's like, have you ever thought about First Word Records? And I was like, oh, the label you're signed to. He's like, yeah, they're great, man. They're great. Ali and Bobby, who head the label, they're awesome, and they really take care of their artists. And I was like, okay, well, I was looking to get some advice, from them, from somebody who's, in the field of labels anyways, to kind of see which would be a good fit. So I said, well, I'll talk to him and see what's up, So
Were you
I,
skeptical to sign with them at all in terms of like, have you been with like labels in the past that you say have been unsuccessful? Like, it's quite important to you in that sense?
no, I wasn't necessarily skeptical. I just hadn't researched First Word Records. And so in terms of like the sound of not the EP that is going to be released on First Word Records now, but the LP that I've been working on.
Okay.
In terms of the sound of that music, I didn't know if First Word Records was going to be, I didn't know if First Word Records would be the best fit for the music at the time. So I didn't really take them into consideration. But one of the heads, Ali, he also has a lot of association with Bandcamp, and he works a lot with releases from so many different genres of music. So I just thought, you know what, at the least, I'll go ahead and probe and ask him to give me some advice on where he thinks the music that I'm working on would be a good fit.
Yeah.
And when we spoke, he's like, listen, we're interested in releasing the music, would you be interested in releasing with us? And Eric spoke so highly of First World Records, and they've got some heavy, they got some heavy hitters, some really great artists that I enjoy on the label. Children of Zeus and Talia in particular. I thought, yeah, why not? So that's how that transpired.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I love First Word Records. I first heard about them through Children of Zeus when they released their, I think it was their first debut album with them, Travel Light, which was
yes.
I've listened to it so many times. I spent like a lot of that summer just banging through the whole like
listening to it. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, coming back to your music, and so like how I first heard of you was through First Word Records.
Okay.
Your track Running Wild, and I just thought, I don't know, I just thought your voice was just amazing, to be honest. It's kind of
thank you, man. Thank you, bro. Appreciate you. Thank you, man.
So like you go into some amazing range, and you got really nice tone. So what was kind of behind that track? Because you'd released the EP before that, but then it seems like you've released a couple singles so far this year. What was the kind of inspiration behind that track? Running Wild.
The inspiration behind Running Wild, I worked on that record with, my brother, longtime friend and music collaborator, Odyssey. And so him and I were discussing, especially after listening to the LP that I produced, before bringing out the LP, how do we usher in this particular sound of music that I'm working with? Because it's very different to what people expect. And so him and I kind of discussing like what the aesthetic, what would my aesthetic sound like if I was to put in all of my influences, new and old? What would my aesthetic sound like? And this is kind of how Running Wild came into play. A lot of the music is very much guitar inspired because I'm a guitarist.
Yeah.
And as I said to you before, a fan of like funk, blues rock, and R&B. So like, how do we meld those influences into what ultimately represents my aesthetic and my sound? And so that's how Running Wild came about. It was just a perfect amalgamation of everything that sums up, who Olivier St Louis is and what Olivier St Louis sounds like.
Yeah, that's dope. Yeah, no, I love that single, and also I love the most recent one, Confliction, with Odyssey.
Yes.
Was he spitting over it? Was he rapping?
Yeah.
So and raps as well.
Yeah, I mean he was spitting, and him and I produced the record together. I mean, essentially I would call him the producer because he, amongst his many gifts, his biggest gift is his objectivity. He really understands taste, and how to still give the best account and representation of yourself while being able to please the listener and please the consumer. He's dope. He's very, very dope.
Yeah.
So yeah, so he produced the record, and he dropped a 16 on it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he sounded sick. That's what he said.
Yeah,
Yeah. And his rapping went really nice together.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Coming back to, you know, kind of what your kind of early inspirations into music, like who are the people around you that kind of really got you involved in music? Like, because you said you were a student studying, you know, biomedicine.
Yeah.
What was that, you know, that burning passion? Where did that all come from music, would you say?
That burning passion for music was always there.
Mm.
I don't know what your background is. What is your background? Where is your family from?
Ghana.
Ghana. Okay. So I was my father Cameroonian, my mother Haitian.
Yeah.
I was raised mostly under a Haitian culture at home, but it's very, very similar to how to the ethos, the African ethos on education, right? So it's like doctor, lawyer, trash man, take your pick.
Yeah.
There is nothing else, right?
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know that. Yeah, that's interesting to know.
Yeah, like, you know, this is I don't know what experiences you've had dealing with your parents or family about your chosen profession or what you want to do with your life versus what they think you should do with your life.
Yeah.
But I can imagine based on the culture, it's not too dissimilar, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, yeah, Haiti is one of those countries in the Caribbean that is very, very closely linked to, like, again, the African ethos of, listen, you go to school, you study, and you get a really, really good job where everybody respects you,
Yeah,
right? And you make money, right?
yeah,
You make money, you make money and you put it back into the family. Okay, so yeah, so it's interesting because music was always a passion of mine, and we have a lot of musicians in the family. My grandmother is God rest her soul. My grandmother was an opera singer. I have a couple of cousins that are singers. I have one cousin who actually studied opera I think it's at Peabody Conservatory in Baltimore. So we have a lot of, like, classical music in our family, but that was very much a pastime, and it's something that you do to kind of, like, bolster, the bourgeoisie of, yes, but we're also physicians and lawyers, because a lot of physicians and lawyers,
yeah,
so there was no way that I was going to do music as a profession, but it was something that I was always passionate about, and I was always singing, I was always listening to music. At the time, hip hop was I listened to a lot of R&B, but hip hop was like my first real delve into, like, obsessing over music. I mean, my mother listened to, like, funk and jazz records, Anita Baker, the Brothers Johnson, and I grew up with that kind of stuff coming from DC.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, my passion really started with hip hop, and then eventually, it's the roots that actually got me back into looking into the classics. But it started off with hip hop, and then through the roots, I started going backwards and listening to Marvin Gaye, listening to Parliament Funkadelic, Sam Cooke, Al Green, and then going further into like, studying rock and blues when I started picking up the guitar. So that's kind of really how that passion started.
Mm. So what do you think of hip hop today? Do you listen to much hip hop music today? The trap the trap sounds quite different to your.
I'll be honest with you. I don't listen to too much hip hop today, if I'm honest with you. And I think, it's, it's not necessarily because I have an inherent, like, disdain for, the way lyrics are being written and spat in, hip hop's current in the current music in the hip hop genre, or even the music itself. How simple I might think you know, I don't have an issue with that, so to speak. It's just that I'm still busy researching and building on like musicianship, like music theory, you know, getting a better understanding of playing playing the guitar and producing, and involving, you know, involving that element. And so it's very difficult in hip hop to find that element to study, if that makes any sense, you know.
Yeah.
I end up going backwards, you know. I end up going back to the 70s and listen to progressive rock music, or, you know, or like I'll go to other genres and I listen to like indie bands, you know, Tame Impala or Unknown Mortal Orchestra or something of that nature. So yeah, it's just that
It's
hip
not
hop doesn't really have anything for me
today. Yeah, it's not really giving you much.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't really have anything for me right now that I could really pull from, you know. It's not to say there aren't enjoyable artists. There are some dope artists that are out today, but in general, yeah.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. It's very different to, I guess, what it was like 20 years ago in the 90s. You know, people always like to compare the now to the 90s, but you know, it is what it is. Kids do
Yeah.
what they need to do in it, really.
It's what sells, man. You know, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned this. I was actually watching, I don't know how I got onto it, but I was doing some jazz studies last night, just to kind of keep abreast. I'm doing some research, and I don't know how I came across Black Thought's 10-minute freestyle on Funk Flex.
Hmm.
I don't know if you've seen it.
I don't think I have, you know, but no.
And I don't know how I came across it, but I think it came about Vlad. I don't know if you're familiar with Vlad TV.
Yeah.
Vlad was talking to, I think, Lord, I think it's Lord Finesse, Lord Finesse, or some other rap artist, and he just came out and said that he didn't think that Black Thought was not in his top 5 lyricists of all time, and that essentially was blasphemous by so many people, because Black Thought, you know, MC from the Roots,
Yeah.
Black Thought is amazing. Like, Black Thought is just, he's nasty, you know.
Yeah.
And and then that controversy, you know, it started coming up in a lot more interviews with other people that he was, other like figures that he was, or personalities that he was interviewing. Yeah, and they were all like, "Look, man, the lyrics that these guys are spitting today, they ain't really saying nothing. You know, they're not really saying much. Like, like rap and hip hop was all about lyrics back in the day, and for you to come out and say someone like Black Thought isn't in your top 5, you haven't really been listening, you know."
No, I get what you mean. It's
different. It's definitely different. You're right. It's different. What it was back then and what it is now is different.
Yeah, no, it's definitely different. Just lastly, as we come like to the close of the chat, what have you got planned for? How's the rest of the year looking like? Well, let's look at 2021, because this year's pretty much been a write-off.
Shut down. That's shut down. Yeah.
I don't It's sad. It's sad there won't be like many, especially in the UK. I don't know what's like in Berlin at the moment, but in the UK, you know, we're pretty much going to go into like a full lockdown for a bit, I reckon.
Yes. Yeah.
We've got a curfew now, so.
Oh wow, curfew's already been put in place. Wow. Okay.
So how's it looking for you in terms of events? Are you doing any live streams next year, or like, you know?
There will be some more. I would, in terms of what it's looking like for the end of 2020 going into 2021, there'll definitely be more releases. I have a release coming out at the end of October for the next single on the EP, and then the actual project in its entirety should be coming out early next year. As a matter of fact, when we finish, I have to have a conversation with the label about scheduling and what we do moving forward. So I'll definitely be working on more content, you know, in terms of like visual content, live content with, you know, Zoom content with the band.
Yeah.
With my band in the UK, the Danger Robinson, and maybe some stuff with Good Company in the States. We'll probably do some more Zoom live work or whatever. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. I mean, in terms of like performances, there were a couple of performances that came up from some other artists asking me to come up and feature feature with them. Some other artists that I wrote some music for, they had a couple of shows in like the Czech Republic and in Prague. And there was supposed to be something happening in the UK with Boiler Room, and I was going to get together with a band and do like a film performance in the UK. But everything got shut down, man. Like in terms of like anything outside of your home or meeting with people who don't test positive for corona, like
Yeah,
everything shut down, man. Like nobody can really put anything on.
yeah, it's literally pretty much just about getting as much music out as possible now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about making as much material as possible, because if there was a time for people to sit and listen to and enjoy new music or consume new music
It'll be
in their home setting, it's now, you know? Yeah,
now's the time. But
yeah,
yeah. Well, at least we can expect some new music from you. And
yeah.
I'm looking forward to hearing the EP and when it comes out. What is it? Beginning of early to 2021, you said?
Yeah, early 2021. I mean, I'll find out more specifics when I talk to the label heads in a bit. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's gonna be early 2021 that we'll have the release. So yeah, it's just gonna be talking about like plans moving forward, like what kind of visual content we're gonna be putting on on the internet, on the web, social media platforms, et cetera, with the coming of the single and the record.
Sick, sick. Well, I'm excited to look forward. I'm excited to listen to it. And I can't wait. So
Yeah. Thank you,
so
man.
where can we find you on Instagram? Plug yourself on.
You can find me on Instagram as Olivier St Louis. Just type in Olivier St Louis in the search engine. OLIVIER.ST.LOUIS, abbreviated Saint. And you can find releases and news on what's going to be happening moving forward at olivierstlouis.net.